Welcome back to the Altars and Ashes podcast, a show for saints called to faithfulness in a hostile age. The altars of God still burn, even as the world turns to ash. Here, we remember that our King is on his throne. His kingdom cannot be shaken, and our task is to build, worship, and endure until he comes. I'm Big Dog Fleming.
I'm Austin Tucker.
And I'm Robbie Stringer.
And today, we are going to talk about false altars. Because, make no mistake, every age builds altars. The only question is whether they are built to the living God or to idols that leave only ashes. All right, gentlemen, how's it going?
Gone good, big dog.
Big Daddy Dog. Robbie, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty swell.
Pretty swell.
Pretty swell.
I feel like we just went back to like the 50s.
Leave it to Beaver.
Yeah, I'm doing swell, sir.
Gee willikers, can we get this started?
Robbie, or Austin, you've been on the road all day today, huh?
Yeah, it's been a good day. Spent some time in Tampa with an organization that I'm on the board on.
Okay.
And education.
Yep.
And but it was a fruitful day.
Yeah.
You just made yourself sound really smart. Yeah, I'm on the board of this education.
Full.
I'm actually on several boards. So I puff my cigar.
On the boards, like on the side of the building and stuff like that. Yeah. Like
boards
wanted.
Offices,
yeah,
boards,
exactly.
yes.
Yeah. Didn't say what kind of board. All right. Well, today we're talking about altars, specifically false altars. And so, just kind of starting out, maybe the point that we start with is that altars are never neutral, right? They're declarations of loyalty, of worship, even identity. And so Scripture shows us again and again, false altars always demand blood. They always devour lives, and they always end in ruins. So let's talk about biblical foundations. What are some altars that you guys can think of in the Bible when we're talking about altars?
We're talking about altars or false altars?
Both. That's we want to carry the whole episode about false altars, but let's talk about.
Can I say this too first? That every society in the Old Testament, whether you're looking at the Moabites, the Edomites, and you go down the line, they all do have altars, which goes along with your introduction. That everybody has altars.
Yep.
And the thing about that, though, is we might think, well, not today, because in a more secularized society, we don't have idols.
Yeah.
We don't have
we're not building
like
those little
And we have less and less places of worship that we go to. In fact, I can't remember if this was us just talking or if this was on the podcast, but I think one of you recently said there was like a church that was now a gym. Or something like that. Was that
a cigar shop?
Yeah, no. Yeah, there's one that I saw on Instagram that was a gym, and then he talked about.
So I don't know if it's the one you're thinking of, but I was watching I was listening to a podcast that has video with it, and they were taking the audience to this old medieval church, and they're like, "Let's go inside," and you go inside, and people are working out in there, and this was in Britain, and so I don't know if that's the one you guys were thinking of, but when we think of like modern, like Western society, we're thinking, okay, there's less worship. Right. There's not really altars. But the thing is, you can have altars that are not physical altars. You can have
for sure
worship that's not like an actual place that you go to because you're going to live for something. Your life's going to be directed towards something.
I think most, as we'll get into it, most of the false altars today are not any physical thing.
No, in fact, I would argue that the false altars of our days in some ways are worse.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to Breaking Point with Stone Street from the Colson Center, and he said something very interesting. He said the pagans, often you see the Bible, we compare us to pagans, and people would say we're pagans. He said, but that's not true. He said the pagan society at least understood that there was a deity order to things.
Absolutely. Yep.
He goes, in our society, it's as there's nothing that we answer to. And so the altars of our day are, I think, more grim than the altars of the past in some ways.
We talked about that a while back, like postmodernism and then like postmodernism. Like
where we're at now.
Yeah, there's no truth. There's no, at least they recognize that there was some sort of God. Most of the time they had multiple gods.
Yep.
But nowadays people don't even realize, they don't even acknowledge a God. Okay, so I want to go back to the biblical foundations, though, because, in my mind, obviously the first thing that comes to mind thinking about a false altar is the golden calf, right? Are there any other ones that you guys can think of off the top? I know, you think of Cain and Abel when they brought their offerings. One was accepted and the other was rejected. And so that wasn't necessarily an altar that was built. We're not necessarily talking about, again, going back to what you said, not necessarily talking about a structure, but an altar as a form of worship.
Well, and there's altars that were meant to be positive, but were against God. We have in our notes, Jeroboam, when he built a false altar, he's taking counsel to honor God, but by dishonoring him and his command. And so he built an altar. Jeroboam built an altar. So we have, I think this lines up with people build altars with good intention that
not
are
the right
unbiblical.
way. Mm-hmm.
Well, in Jeroboam's case, he was building these new altars because it was politically convenient for him.
Right.
Because he was, the nation had just split into two.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the half that does not have Jerusalem, does not have the temple. And he doesn't want people from his side of the kingdom traveling back to Jerusalem and saying, hey, maybe the line of David wasn't so bad after all, and going back to them. So he creates these altars and then and these altars are, actual more gold. We have more golden calves.
Right.
And they don't have a Levitical priest, or they're not doing it in any of the ways that God had said, but they're still going to put God's name on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always get confused between Jeroboam and Rehoboam. I was like, wait, which one's which? Okay. Well, so I think maybe that's enough of a introduction to altars. Let's talk about what a false altar is. Okay, so false altars are not just ancient statues or, pagan poles like that we might think of, although we've certainly in modern day in other societies, in the U.S. we don't see a lot of that, but other societies still have very, pagan altars that they represent. What do we see here in the U.S. or in the Western world? What kind of false altars do we often see?
Sports.
Okay.
I mean, I've witnessed pastors about lose their cheese when somebody, instead of kicking a field goal, tries to run a ball.
Yeah. Now, I was like, wait a second. Last week, what it was is all they had. That's right. They ran the ball. They should have gone ahead and kicked the field goal. They ran the ball, and then they go and kick the field goal and missed the field goal. Gee whiz. Yeah. Okay.
So Big Dog about lost his faith this past Saturday.
Big Dog almost went off on the dogs. Is what it was. Yeah. No. Yeah. You're right. Sports. I mean, I remember grown ups, like, this is just as in my mind, just as much as anything I can remember. We would every single Sunday on the way to church, we had to pass a golf course, and it'd be 8:30 in the morning, and you're going to church, and the parking lot of the golf course was full. And I remember my dad saying one time, like, this is their church. This is the God that they worship. And it was like, that's a really good point. I mean, and you hear some people say, I'm never closer to God than when I'm on the golf course, or I'm never closer to God, which they obviously are way better than me, because I'm never closer to Satan when I'm on the golf course. Like, I'm that bad.
I like to play in the shade myself. Yeah.
Or, sometimes people will say, like, they, when they go hiking or something like that, they're never closer to God or whatever. But yeah, I can see how sports can be that. I mean, especially, think about the travel leagues for kids and things like that. And a lot of times people miss church and stuff like that.
I think there's been a shift in our culture. So when I was a boy in the 90s, these baseball leagues that we were in, I don't think they demanded as much from us. The travel ball thing wasn't like it is now. And I say this from the perspective, perhaps I was never good enough to be invited to any of those teams.
That's probably what it was, yeah. Right.
But at the same time, with our school and working with a lot of kids, I know a lot of these kids, these parents fork out thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And the kids miss church for 3 months straight.
During travel season or
During
whatever.
travel season. And it becomes the God of their life. And I've seen this in cheer. I've seen this in baseball particularly. Those are the two sports I've witnessed it in personally.
Cheering and
travel cheer
and
teams.
Baseball.
Yep.
Yeah, soccer a lot of times is on Sunday mornings
Clubs.
too.
Yeah.
I think one thing to say about, well, of course, you're talking about playing sports. I get, and we also mentioned watching sports.
Yeah, I mean, especially Sunday, right? Like Sunday's NFL during the fall, and so a lot of people miss church because they're going to tailgate or something like that.
Right. I think a conversation about entertainment in general needs to happen, because I think entertainment can definitely be an idol or a false altar. I don't think it has to be.
Okay.
And here's my kind of perspective, and you guys can kind of comment on it.
I'll tell you you're wrong, since you always tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's just you're wrong so much.
I know. I give you a lot of opportunity.
Robbie, go ahead and start sharing.
Thank you.
You're wrong.
So one thing I like to think of when it comes to entertainment, if we're going to say, or maybe one way to look at it is this: if you're talking about rest versus work, a lot of people, their ultimate desire in life is to have as much rest and entertainment and fun, leisure,
luxury
as possible.
Yeah.
And if you listen to them, they're always complaining about work, and it sounds like or any kind of responsibility that they have. And it seems like their ultimate goal in life would be to sleep in every day, watch sports, watch movies, go do something fun. And if you let them, if you gave them an infinite amount of money, that is how that they would live. I think that's very unhelpful because God has called us to work.
Sure.
Adam was made to subdue the earth, to fill the earth. So in other words, to work, build things, develop things, have a family, develop a family. And that's what God made us to do. However, we do need rest. And so the way I always ask it is your rest a break from work, or is your work a break from rest that you're doing most of the time?
Wait, say that one more time.
So is your life primarily based, are you using your time for work? You're doing, your main point of your life is to do the things that you've been called to, your callings.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, though, everybody does need a break. They need
yeah.
rest. And so are you taking some time for that rest to take a break from your work? Or is your life mainly focused upon rest and leisure, and you occasionally work when you absolutely have to?
So what you're saying, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that leisure is as much a false altar as anything today because people want it so badly. Okay.
It could be.
But I think you've hit on another point, though. Careerism
yes.
can be an altar, right? Go ahead. I think you were going to say.
No, yeah,
okay.
I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, especially in bigger cities, right, where the hustle is.
The millennial generation and underneath particularly are obsessive. It's
about career, about growth, and about moving up the ladder.
In fact, there's whole YouTube's videos about the best time to move, because if you planned the moving into different organizations, you can calculate your availability to grow in your payment and the amount you make and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole art to just moving forward, where if we go to our grandfather's day, it was kind of like you get a job at Ford, you're a Ford man.
Yeah,
you get a job
there your whole career.
You work up, they take care of you, you take care of them. And it went from this family company mindset. And let's be honest, corporations started treating people like chattel.
Oh, right.
But it's almost become a god. I would put it this way. A false altar is anything that obscures the glory of God. Anything that
define that. Break that down a little bit.
Well, I stole it from Calvin.
Okay.
So Calvin said the altar is a symbol of God's worship. When false ones are erected, his glory is obscured. We must therefore contend earnestly for his true worship. So anything that gets in the way of us worshiping God, anything that obscures our time, our heart, our loves, our passions from God. Because our command is to love God with all of our heart, soul, and might, strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Anything that keeps us from that love, or that obscures the attitude we should have to God because we're so obsessed with that.
Okay.
Working has a tendency of becoming an idol, and not working.
Yeah. Either one could be an idol.
When it obscures our desire and dedication to the Lord.
You say that, and I'm not speaking down, because God gifted me with a godly father. But he had the tendency, my dad had a tendency to be a workaholic, to be a workaholic. And it's funny because I remember as a teenager, it really bothering me to the point I'm finding myself now, it's no, I'm taking today off.
Yeah.
You just have
forcing
to have
yourself
that.
to have the rest. Yeah.
Yes. It's spend some time, get some laughs in with the kids, love with my wife, have devotion, do those things which are restful to the soul, Sabbath-wise.
Interestingly, one of the things that I wrote down, and this is not what you were saying at all, but it just seemed like a natural segue, is that sometimes family can be an altar, a false altar, right?
Wives. I think sometimes
wives are the problem, is what you're saying?
Oh, 100%. You all heard it from Big Dog. He said all wives are the problem. He did not say that.
No, I did not. But family can be, right? If, were you getting ready to say something? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Wives and children become false altars.
So
well, when they're loved more than Christ, when they're devoted to them more than
I'm going to
Christ.
put something out there that's going to kind of mess with people, and it's Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson talks about
he does mess with people.
He does.
Yeah.
He loves messing.
You
with
say
people.
his name, and
I just made the reform side of people who listen to us. Half of them just got triggered by the name Doug Wilson.
They either got excited or triggered.
Yes.
Yeah.
But one thing he talks about is the husband who just apologizes for the sake of peace.
Right.
And the question is truth the authority in your marriage, or is your peace the authority in your marriage? Now, men should be the first to apologize when they do wrong, but if truth is the center of your marriage, you don't apologize for peace sakes. You're turning your wife into an altar above truth.
So are you saying that happy wife, happy life
that's a
might
load
not
of
be
bull dookie?
Yeah, might not be the way to run your marriage?
No.
Yeah.
That's a load.
No. You know, the things we've mentioned so far are not things that are bad in and of themselves.
I think that's a great point. So all of the things in and of themselves might not be bad at all.
So family and children, like wife and children, obviously not a bad thing.
Yeah, good thing.
Work, if we're not working, there's a problem.
Right.
If we're not taking some time to rest, and I do think I think it's fine to enjoy things. God's given us a world filled of things that we can enjoy.
Well, he also gave us a day of rest.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are all not bad things, but they can be made bad things when our loves are disordered, when we love these things more than we love God.
Yep. We should do an episode on the Ordo Amoris.
I think we've done one of those before, haven't we?
We definitely have done that. Yeah.
What's this we stuff?
Oh, that's right. That was back when our show was much better, had a different name, and only had two
It
co-hosts.
only had two really, really good hosts.
But only you, Austin, I believe. the other, I wasn't here. Big Dog.
No, I wasn't here.
There was no one named Big Dog.
There was no big dogs here back then. Just little dogs.
little chihuahuas.
All right. So you sort of hinted on something, Robbie, but I thought you were going to go into it and you didn't. Material concerns. So you were talking about God gives us things, right? And, you know, I mean, a location can be a great thing. A home is a great thing, right? Like having a car to get to work is a great thing. So material possessions can be good, but when you serve those over God, then it becomes a false altar.
Absolutely.
Right. How about anxiety?
See, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Anxiety.
I would be willing to bet that most, if not all, of our listeners have at some point made anxiety into a false altar. I know I have.
Oh, I have too.
Yeah.
But that's the problem is because of our fallen nature, we will biologically go into fight or flight over things that we should be giving to the Lord.
Right.
And as a pastor, so my PhD is in psychology.
Oh, he's so smart.
So
intelligent.
He
so
has
intelligent.
He has a PhD.
Doctor
just
Tucker.
FYI.
No wonder he's on so many boards.
Just FYI, PhD means absolutely nothing. It just means they spent too many years on one subject. There's a lot of idiots with doctors.
So you're saying you have nothing
I'm
to
an
show
idiot.
for it?
God, for some reason. So I've studied this out extensively. I've written a lot of things on it. And because on one end, the Nuthaic argument would be,
the what?
Nuthaic, that is the biblical.
Oh, gosh, here we go. I don't even know these words.
Put your anxiety on God, put your care in Him. This is sin for you. But on the other hand...
Austin, can you define Nuthaic, though, in seriousness, since you used the term?
Okay. So Nuthaic, you see it in Scripture pop up. It's from the Greek. It means to put in mind. Paul uses it through the Scriptures. Romans 15:14, I myself am satisfied about you, my brethren, that you yourselves are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, and able to instruct, nutheo, one another, instruct one another. So the concept was invented by a great man named J. Adams, and it was the argument that the best way to deal with all issues with Christians is to put in mind or to put remembrance of what the Bible says. So in other words, the heal all for all things is just giving them the Scripture and driving them to Christ, which I would totally agree with. But on the other end, there's also, we're living in a society where people are eating horrible, staying up all night, taking in stuff they shouldn't have, and they're finding themselves going into fight or flight chemically for no reason. So I don't even know how we got down on this road.
Well, we're just talking about
he was talking about anxiety.
Yeah.
So anxiety, I would say that's a double-edged sword because, yes, it can absolutely be an altar, and people bow down to it as if there's no hope.
It also sort of becomes a master, right? Like it dictates how you move forward or whether you move forward at all. Like it can become this debilitating thing that enslaves us. And so instead of obeying what God says, going back to the word, like you said, pointing back to what God's promises are, you instead just kind of do nothing.
Yeah.
Because you're sort of in this stage where you don't really know what to do. You don't feel like doing anything. Or it might even just be like a state of fear, you know?
And you're saying that like dominates you and controls you.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it becomes like, if we're going to define God in that sense, is something that your whole life is about and controls your...
Well, going back to the obscurity part, what it's doing is obscuring God's truth and who he is and not allowing you to focus on him.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I mean by it.
And it's funny because our minds will take the smallest anthill and make it into a freaking mountain.
Yeah. Usually at 3:00 in the morning.
That's me too. I'm one of those people that wake up and then my mind won't shut up, and then you just gotta.
I never have problems falling asleep, like some people do. My wife gets mad at me because as soon as
when my head hits the pillow, same.
But
here.
Sometimes I do wake up and then I'm just thinking about something and I just can't go back to sleep. And it's not always anxiety.
Sometimes you're thinking about me.
Sometimes.
He's thinking, God, I got to go back and work with that dude again tomorrow. Yeah.
I make his life miserable at work. I mean, so.
Yeah. I believe that.
Well, lately you haven't been there as much, so it's been...
No, I haven't.
It's been good.
It's been great, right? Yeah.
Or, no.
Trying to
lay baseboard in a house where the walls are crooked and the floor's not even. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I got a couple more that hopefully make sense to you guys. And if they don't, just pretend like they do. What about busyness? So you mentioned that earlier. It's almost like this, we're so busy working all the time, and we sort of pride ourselves on how busy you are. And so like, I think even tonight when you came here, you said, how was your week? And I'm like, man, or how was your day? It's like, it's so busy. And it's like, it was really busy, but that's not, why is that a thing that we pride ourselves on? And we end up like almost worshiping endless activity.
We're in a society that worships endless activity as it is.
Yeah. I think especially in the West or in the U.S. for sure.
It's definitely
like,
a Western.
It's more in the West.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
You know, that's kind of I'm of two minds on that, though.
Okay.
Because on the one hand, I do think...
A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, brother.
I asked for that.
Yeah.
You threw me off my train of thought. So on the one hand, on the West, we are busier, but I think part of that is because we are more time-oriented. And to us, we're more scheduled. Because I've been around people from other societies and other cultures, and I've seen the way that they do things. And it's, you know, they give you a time of when something's going to start, and it's not going to start at that time. That's when people are going to gradually start filing in. An ending time for societies like that mean absolutely nothing. And so we are much more scheduled. We want to know when things start and when things end, so that we can plan what we're going to do before that and what we're going to do after that. And on the one hand, that means we get a lot done.
Yeah.
And I think accomplishing things with the time that God has given us is a good thing.
Yep.
But it can also be a bad thing where our whole life is just busyness, and we almost worship, like that's what we pride our lives on. And we're not even necessarily accomplishing anything in those times. We're just busy. When I think about that, it's just, you know, on the one hand, we don't want to discourage people doing things, because there is the culture of people that are just like working all the time and wearing themselves out and not giving God and their families and all this the attention that they deserve. But then, of course, there's the other type of person that, you know, just absently minded
doesn't get anything done.
Lets hours go by and they don't know what.
Well, right, because we're called to redeem the time.
Right.
So if you're not doing anything, that's not good. And if you're too busy to do the things that you're supposed to do, that's not good.
Again, it's two sides, two pits.
Yeah.
You've got a love for the world and entertainment, and a love for not doing anything.
Yeah.
A love for working too much.
And working too little.
I think, and that ties in with anxiety, because I think we've just given everyone anxiety, because we've said, like, no matter what you're doing, it can be bad.
It's never good enough. I think Facebook and
Yeah.
social media drive anxiety at levels we've never seen.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah.
I think it depends on your personality, because there's some people who look at what other people are doing. They're like, man, I wish I had that.
Yeah. Sure.
And there's other people who look at them like, that's cool, they're doing that.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on your personality.
You know, this just reminded me, Screw Tape Letters, C.S. Lewis.
He said to keep him busy.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Talks about
You're right.
keeping them
Remember that.
busy and making them think that they're accomplishing much.
Yep.
And then also, like, he even goes far as talking about gluttony. He said the opposite pit of gluttony, that somebody would pride themselves on what they won't eat to the point where it becomes a idol to them.
That was my next thing, is pride.
Yeah.
So the next thing I was going to talk about is pride, because we pride ourselves on certain things, and whatever it is, like you might pride yourself on being super fit, or you might pride yourself on being a PhD,
on a lot of boards,
intellectual mastermind over here. No.
Hey, have you all seen my picture at the post office? I look great on those boards.
No, but we can pride ourselves.
Do you not know what boards we're talking about?
What are you talking about?
Most wanted?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Every post office has a wanted board. Yeah.
So kind of going back to that, what you're saying though is like we could pride ourselves on our busyness, or we can pride ourselves on the career,
or if we feel like we don't make these things our idols.
Oh, you can be prideful about not having things.
Right.
Poor pride. That's a thing you see all the time.
And or like what I was thinking, that although that's true too. For instance, we mentioned sports earlier. If you're not a person who's interested in sports,
you're going to talk about the person who is really interested.
Yeah, you can look at them and be like, "Wow!"
I
like
would
the person,
never do that.
like, look how spiritual.
I still cannot believe you guys spend as much money as you do on these streaming packages during this season.
Yeah, Robbie's bad about
I'm
that.
But my point is that a lot of times we pick what other people do. That is not our thing.
Yep.
And we like you mentioned golf.
Yep.
I don't care about golf. I don't want to play golf. So that's an easy thing for me to criticize, because it's not something I even need to control. That's not that's not the entertainment or the way I rest or the way I spend my time. And other people that aren't workaholics, like, man, those terrible workaholics. But the thing is, we all have our own things.
Yeah.
And even when we don't, pride then starts to creep up.
I believe it's Jay Adams, because you have him in my mind now, who gave the illustration that everybody likes to look at everybody's short trees from their tall tree.
Who's this Jay Adams cat? Why don't I know?
He's a Presbyterian minister who basically founded biblical counseling.
Okay.
He's like the father of biblical
counseling.
Yeah.
Okay. What about globalism?
All I can think of is that little girl. What's her name?
The one.
You have to be ashamed.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Are you talking about the girl from like Scandinavia?
Yes.
What's her name?
She was like 13. Now she's an adult getting arrested at all these protests. Greta Thunberg.
Yeah. And it fits her. Greta fits her. She looks like a Greta.
Now, how I know what globalism is. How would you say that is an idol?
So where I'm going with that is, people often think that they are so open to like worldliness, and they think that other people are very closed-minded. And so it becomes this thing like, oh, I love everybody. I want this whole everybody coming into our nation. We're just one big melting pot.
Yeah, and globalism is a religion.
That's a good point. So
we are going, because it's always wrapped around climate change, shortages of water. By the way, folks, we live in a terrarium hung in space. We're not going to ever have a shortage of water, okay? It's hung around all these things. So it's wrapped around a religion. And the concept is we must find the solution. And the only way we can do that is if we come together as a world. And then you have people, and this is a really good place to go that's not on your list. You have people like Elon Musk, which are pro-globalism, but not pro-totalitarianism. And they're asking him, well, if we can't have globalism the way you want, what's the answer? And he said, technology, AI. Basically, one day we'll all have AI overlords.
Now he's I mean, he still does the AI with Grok and everything like that, but he's expressed a lot of concern with AI too.
But that's become another religion in itself.
Interesting.
And it's a different form of globalism. So we're going to create this being that's supposedly smarter than us, that's going to tell us basically be everybody's mommy and daddy. That's the concept they're pushing. And transhumanism. is what they're calling it.
So globalism can open some very dark doors. On the other side, I suppose nationalism could also open up some dark doors too.
No, it's perfect.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah. Yes, it can.
Yeah.
And maybe what we ought to do is just say any
Ideology.
Well, yeah, I guess. I'm thinking like in my mind where I was going with that is like tolerance. Just this, a lot of people almost pride themselves on being so tolerant that they'll allow, basically they're saying, I allow everybody to have their own, religion, to the point where it's almost like this syncretism where they're all just blended into one, the whole coexist sticker and all religions are right. And I'm so tolerant. You're
The
just a bigot because you're,
generation.
yeah, pluralism. Yeah.
And it's the pluralism. People will tell you, well, America is founded on pluralism. Robbie, were we founded on pluralism?
He's going to
No.
say yes just because you said that.
Yeah, no. I mean, I there's lots of different ways you can take pluralism, but if you're talking about religiously speaking, is that where
Yes,
you're thinking?
as a nation.
Religiously, I think the assumption was that everybody was going to be some type of Christian. There might be other groups here. I imagine there was at least some Jews here early on, but not probably a very, very low percentage. I doubt very many, if any, Muslims. I'm not really sure about that.
When did you start hating the Jews, Robbie?
Yes. I was going to say it.
Since I started hanging out with Big Dog, that's kind of his thing. But that's a joke. But
it's funny how you have to caption that in our day.
I know. Yeah.
So the thing is, I'm using my actual name, so it's important.
You have to be careful. Yeah.
Some aspects, like if you asked our founding fathers, are you tolerant? They probably would have said, well, yeah, because some people are Baptists and some people are Presbyterians. We even have a minority of Catholics in here. And I think the idea that a vast majority of people that were going to be in our nation were not going to be a Christian of some kind, I think they would have found that like very difficult to imagine.
In fact, most states had an official church originally.
True. Everybody but Rhode Island.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So what have we lost? What are the ashes as a result of all these false altars or false worship?
Well, this pluralism brought in secular humanism, and it brought in all the other things, made Wicca and Satanism acceptable in our culture. I mean, to this day, because of some Supreme Court ruling, I forget which one, public schools are allowed to have Satan Club.
Yeah.
And have Satan clubs.
Yep.
And this is all pluralism. I don't think that's what our founding fathers intended.
Right.
And I don't think that anything good comes from pluralism. Nothing good comes from pluralism.
Can you just imagine people standing around like, hey, you going to Satan Club today? I don't know. I'm kind of getting tired of Satan Club. I don't know. I can't imagine conversations like that.
I don't know how those conversations.
Hey, you want to go to Satan Club with me?
There's probably a lot of those conversations.
Oh, there is. There probably is those conversations. We grew up in Christian schools, but I'm sure those conversations exist. What's that? The show with 11
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, and the boy had that shirt, the Hell's Fire Club. Remember that?
Is this a test?
No, it was funny.
Hellfire Club. Yes, is what
the Hellfire Club. One of our boys that graduated from our school loves that show and had that T-shirt. And he wore it to a Wednesday night thing. And I was like, dude, he goes, it's just a fan shirt. I was like, yeah, but you're still walking around with a shirt that says Hellfire Club on it.
Yeah.
So these conversations are had.
So I've got listed here, I said, at the altar of entertainment, we've lost wonder. And we've talked about that before, Austin, with Nate's book. What's it called? The Tilt-A-Whirl.
Notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl.
Notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl. Like, and you read writers like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and stuff like that, and we just don't really have the ability to even see like these other dimensions, and things like that they saw. And I wonder how much of that comes from busyness.
What do you mean by other dimensions?
I don't think he means other dimensions.
Yeah, Well, I think there are other dimensions, though, in the sense that, like,
we just brought up Stranger Things, so I didn't know, but other dimension,
but
there's
a UFO. Look,
but I just mean, what did you mean by we can't see? What is it that we're not seeing in that?
The whole world around us, the fact that we're sitting on this ball that's spinning throughout space. Just like you look at the galaxies,
like the wonders of nature of God's creation.
Exactly. Just
The
like
cosmos.
the things that should make us stand in awe of God, we don't even pay attention to.
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've moved from a generation that we're in awe of a baby's laughter and the miracle of it to
Some people
ignoring it. Some people are. I have found myself, the older I've got, the more I've stopped and went, I need to appreciate the sunrise, the sunset.
Yeah.
They're never going to be the same.
Well,
I
that's
need
what
to
I'm talking about.
appreciate-
If you're always busy, you never see that. If you're putting ambition above everything, or the accumulation of wealth and
we've
things.
told our kids, well, I haven't told my kids, but this generation has told our kids, there's no such thing as magic.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Right.
There's no such thing as miracles and wonders. Everything can be explained by science. You are nothing but stardust, and you have no purpose.
Which is crazy, because that would be a miracle in and of itself.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Big
Like, if
Bang
you
requires
were,
one miracle.
that's what I'm saying. If
Yeah.
if you were stardust and you're now a person, that would require a miracle.
I do wonder, though, if we're taught when we say that, because I think that way too.
That you were stardust.
That
No.
there's no miracle.
I think of that as the opposition to what I believe.
Yes. Okay.
But today, I don't know if our younger people are living in those same messages and same world we are, because you hear them say things like, "What's your sign?"
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
And we were just talking about like Wicca and Satan Club.
Yep.
This new generation is very much more open to the spiritual world. While our generation, when we were younger, when we were teenagers, very young adults, we would probably, a lot of people of our generation would say, I don't believe in the supernatural. Everything's science, everything.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's as true as it used
It just hit me in opposition to Stone Street and what he said on his podcast this morning. We are becoming a pagan nation again.
Huh.
They are starting to look to something divine, but they don't know what it is.
Do you think, though, because I could see this in a positive or a negative way. The negative way, of course, would be that people want paganism.
Right.
The positive way would be people are seeing like our generation's materialism, and I mean that in two different ways, like the materialism of like just caring about money and things like that, but also just only seeing the material world and saying this is empty. I want something more
than that. Yeah.
But the problem is they don't know what to seek. They don't know God, and so they're grasping whatever comes along, and even if it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Because
that's interesting, because that changes how we reach the culture.
Right.
Yeah.
And that makes me think of things like Haunted Cosmos, like that podcast. Things like that are probably more attractive to the people that you're talking about, the generation that you're talking about, because they're going, oh, I believe that there are those things, but I don't have the biblical worldview to put it within that worldview framework.
Well, Haunted Cosmos, do you follow
I've
them?
listened to 2 or 3 episodes. It's not my cup of tea.
They're on my radar. I if I see a title that's interesting to me, I'll listen to it.
Okay.
They just did one on Ouija boards, and the whole thing on Haunted Cosmos is they talk about true stories that happen and about these people who got haunted and how they track it down online and find all these people.
Right.
I'll start with the same Ouija board, all these people playing with Ouija boards, and people play with it because they think this is fun, this ain't real, this is fake, because we've told them that, well, we haven't. The world has told them there's no such thing as the spiritual.
Right.
And then they invite the demonic into their life by doing these things. And it's just an interesting thought that maybe at some point people are starting to realize there is the spiritual.
Yeah, that's I'm not in tune with that age group like you are teaching. So that to me is new. I hadn't heard anybody really say that yet, but that has to change how we approach.
Well, it means that it depends on kind of what generation you're talking to then, right?
Exactly.
So if you're talking to someone our age and we're all in our, you're like late 30s, okay,
39.
and early 40s. I'm earlier 40s than Austin. I just thought
You guys are in the old man club.
Yeah.
You'll be there next year, right?
I'll be there in February.
February?
Yep.
It would be nice not to be sitting at a table with a bunch of whippersnappers.
Yeah. All right, I got another one for you. At the false altar of ambition, we've lost our true calling. So what is our true calling?
That particular, at the false altar of ambition, that drives me to the book of Revelation.
Okay.
The Laodicean church, they have a lot, they're rich, but they lost their first love.
First love.
I mean, that's the thing. And I think even churches will have an altar of ambition that's fill the pews. Let's run another campaign. Let's pack it out. And what you attract people with, you keep them with.
Of course. Yep.
And so they keep having bigger and bigger concerts, shorter and shorter sermons. And for ambition, for building a big church, they lost the entire call of the church.
Oh, yeah.
They're not discipling people.
Yep.
There's pastors. The average tenure of a pastor is 2 to 4 years. And
like
what they'll,
at their church. Okay.
Yeah, and they'll move to next church.
A bigger church.
They'll build their resume to move to a larger church.
Right.
And for ambition, they lost their entire calling.
Can I read a passage from Revelation from the Church of Laodicea that you were just talking about, which, if you're not familiar with that, there's 7 churches that are mentioned in the book of Revelation, and this is before you get to the more debatable stuff that Christians argue about.
Would you say this is the last church age?
No.
Okay. Me neither.
I would not say that. There's a lot of, like, I think, room for debate in Revelation, but I'm going to say pretty confidently that
there's no church.
There's not the 7 church ages.
Yeah.
But there were 7 literal churches that existed at the time that this was given. And this Church of Laodicea, when we're talking about like ambition, materialism, all that kind of stuff, it says in chapter 3, verse 17, it says, "For you say, I am rich, I have prospered, and I need nothing, not realizing that you are wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked." So in other words, this church that believes they have a lot, actually, he says,
nothing.
From God's perspective, you have nothing.
You're
You are
pitiable.
poor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's he tell them to do?
He says, "I counsel you to buy from me gold refined by fire, so that you may be rich, and white garments, so that you may clothe yourselves, and the shame of your nakedness may not be seen, and salve to anoint your eyes, so that you may see."
So his call is go do works that remain and wear righteousness, my righteousness, white robes, and to basically fix your vision. I think a lot of us with ambition, we're looking to the wrong things instead of looking to Christ.
Yeah. What chapter was that, so people can go look it up?
Chapter 3.
And, Big Dog, when you were saying earlier, you asked, like, what did we lose from this? And you came up with the different, like, categories.
Yeah.
My first thought was, and this is kind of a very basic answer, but what did we lose from all this? And the answer is God.
Yeah.
Because that's what false altars do. They replace God in your life. Or sometimes sneakily, they don't banish him completely.
Yep.
They just lower him on the focus.
Yep.
And so it seems like he's still there, but we've now elevated sometimes bad things, sometimes, as we've been saying,
things that could be
would
good.
be good if they were ordered correctly
Yep.
in that ranking. And that is what we lose through that. We go through our whole busy lives focusing on our ambition, our entertainment, or whatever it is in our particular life, and we go through the whole day without thinking about God even once.
Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13, Jeremiah writes this, he said, "For my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters." So first they forsake God. He's the fountain of living waters. And what did they do in its place? They hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. So they forsake the living water, try to create their own cistern. A cistern is an Old English word for a storage thing for water, but they're broken cisterns that can't hold any water at all. So in other words, instead of coming to the source of living water, they're trying to heap up their own water by their own power, by their own strength, and they're not holding any water.
Yeah. One that really I felt a little guilty going through this was, at the altar of comfort, we've lost courage.
Ooh.
And so, going through the last couple months, needing to maintain a living made me feel like, okay, was comfort the driving factor for not and there's certain things, and we've talked about this, the three of us, just like you got to care for your family and stuff like that first. That's your first ministry. But at the same time, there are things that I feel like I would have said if comfort wasn't.
But you didn't run.
No.
You readjusted.
Yeah.
That's courageous. This could still cost you.
Yeah. Yeah, good. But I just, as a general rule, we're not as courageous if we're holding on to comfort.
Well, Jesus, in his hard sayings, man comes and says, "I'll follow you wherever I go." Birds have nests, fox have hold, Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Man don't follow. The other guy turns to him, "I'll follow you, but let me first go bury my dad and get my inheritance." And he says, "Let the dead bury the dead."
Yep.
So I think that was Jesus's whole point, is following him is about not living for comfort.
Yeah. He has to be the first love.
He has to be the first love.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, going back to the fear and anxiety part, at the altar of that, we've lost obedience. Let's move into some practicality. How do we resist these altars? We've talked about money. We've talked about status. We've talked about jobs. We've talked about all these different things. How do we resist them?
We get 20 acres, erect a fence, start a cult. We grow our own food.
Tell me more.
Yeah, it does sound amazing. It really does. It really does. I want nothing more than just to go live on, a little tiny cabin where nobody's at half the time.
We'll be talking a little bit about that in the next episode when we talk about Daniel and his life, what it's like to live in those pagan kingdoms, because we are living in the pagan kingdom.
We are.
But,
I think the first thing that is in my mind is we have to repent, right? We have to acknowledge what we have made an altar before God. And you mentioned it earlier. Everybody's got something a little different, right? And it may be multiple things. In fact, it is multiple things. We all have multiple things that at various points in time we put before God.
I think a big part of that is prayer. Do we have the love for God to say, God, if I have false altars in my life, will you show them to me?
Let me just throw something out here. Prayer is one of the things that we've lost because of busyness, because of our distractions, because of our attention spans that are like the size of a gnat now. We can't even sit down and actually pray.
I will say that for a long time, and still to a degree, was one of my great struggles.
Okay. Yeah.
Reading my Bible, I could do, because opening it up, reading it, it's part of the schedule where I'm doing something.
And you love reading in general.
And I do love reading in general. That's true. But prayer, I just sit there and I know I'm doing something. I'm talking to my God and my Savior.
Right.
So when I say this, don't take it the wrong way. In my flesh, it sometimes feels like I'm not
doing anything. Yeah. You're not being active.
And I could be doing something else.
Like Martha, Mary, just staying busy.
Just busy all the time instead of sitting
at the feet of Jesus.
Yep.
I think I feel the same way too. There are times when I'm doing my job, preparing my mind, reading my Bible, reading the books, and I sometimes get in this mode. It's like, I need to go do something,
productive,
which ironically, if I'm
as
not
if what you're
pouring
not
in, I'm not going to be able to pour out.
Right.
But I think even that crosses my mind. And I would even say this, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I have found reading to become an idol to me at times in my life.
Yep. Sure.
Where I will
where you sacrifice other things because you're trying to
my family, neglect other things just because I'm obsessed. I go through seasons. And then the Lord slaps me around a little bit and I get balanced, and then I end up getting unbalanced in something else. It's a constant.
And I think that's why prayer is so important, because you need to pray for wisdom and vision to be able to see, God, what are you calling me to? And how are you calling me to, I guess, like, I'm a very scheduled person.
Yeah.
So I'm saying this in a very scheduled way because this is how I think about my life. Like, how do you want me to order my life? Like, what do you want to be there? And is there something that is becoming too much of an idol that is taking away from those other things that God's called me to?
And a practical notion for the young Christians listening, reading the Bible is God speaking to us. Prayer is us speaking to God. The conversation has to be 2 ways.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. So I think naming the false altars that you have is important, repenting of them, rebuilding true worship, right? You talked about prayer, talked about word. We've talked about a lot about the home as a haven for us, and our job is to lead, right? So rebuilding the home as a place that is glorifying to God, going back to your Calvin quote, removing the things that are just taking away from him and recentering on Christ.
In the words of Paul, laying aside every weight that easily besets you so you can run the race set before you.
Yeah.
I think from a practical way, what you could maybe ask yourself is, what does God want me to do? What is God calling me to do in my life? And some of those things might be specific from person to person, like different, but some of those are going to be the same.
Yeah.
So you have an in-ordered life if you are not in church on Sunday.
Amen.
And I would say if your church has Sunday school, like a service before the service, if you're going to be there anyway,
show up an hour earlier
and get something from that. Be in your church as much as possible. be praying daily.
Yep.
You know God wants you to do that.
Yep.
God's calling you to that. We've got the ability to read our Bibles on a regular basis, and so we need to be doing that. If you are a parent, you are called to your children, and so you need to be asking, am I giving my children the presence
Yep.
and I mean, just being in the home, I think, is a big thing.
Yeah.
Am I sitting down and doing things with them on a regular basis? If you're married, am I spending time with my spouse? And the first thing you got to do is, if entertainment's a big part of your life, and if you say no to any of these things, that's the first place you start cutting.
Yeah.
Again, rest is important, and however you choose to do it, that's your thing, in my opinion. But if it's cutting into these other things, then you have a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's good. One of the other things that we have to do, I think, is not let fear control us. And then, you sort of just talked about it, reclaiming the Sabbath, starting with worship of God with his people, but also actually using that day for rest, the 1 in 7 day, right? And I think that's really hard for us.
And and let me say one thing: if you're trying to know how to organize that other good stuff I just talked about, if you say, well, I'm going to spend time with my family, so this Sunday morning we're going to the beach. But wait a minute here, because now we've taken worship out.
Yep.
And I feel like in most cases, you probably should have organized that in a different way.
Start with the worship.
Start with the importance of worship.
I would say this to make it a habit. So families need vacation. For me, vacation means getting away from work. For me, work is the church that I am faithful to. But when I go on vacation, especially when my kids were little, the best thing I can do on Sunday was get up and go to a sister church, worship God together, then go to the beach.
Absolutely.
That way the family sees God as a center of your life. And it's good, particularly for my kids, to hear somebody other than daddy preach once in a blue moon.
Yeah, that's right.
Especially for your kids.
Yes, especially for my kids.
Luckily, they have Robbie on Wednesday night.
That's true.
All right. Well, every act of worship is an act of war, I think, is one of the things that I want to say. Like, even sitting down to the dinner table with your family, Robbie, going back to your point a second ago, is a blow against the idols of the age, because you're saying, I'm going to take the time to invest right here in the people that mean the most to me, that God put in my care.
And I'll say, sometimes you got to correct yourself on this. Like when me and my wife first got married, somehow we got into the habit of watching TV while we ate.
Eating.
And I don't think it started all at once until one day we're just like, we never just sit down and eat anymore.
Yep.
And so we had to make the conscious decision to say, hey, we're making a mistake here that's going to cost us in the long run.
Yeah.
And so we had to go back and intentionally choose not to do that. And now it doesn't even really occur to me to do it most of the time, because we made that change.
Yeah.
Rewired
early enough.
thing.
Yeah. Yep. And even if you haven't done it early, start now.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why, a couple episodes ago, we were talking about, like, what could people do? And we each had one different thing. Like, one of us said, start with your Bible. I think you said start just by going to church. And I said, start at your dinner table. The whole point is you got to start somewhere. So,
yeah. Mock the false altars for what they are.
Yeah.
Just like the great men of the Old Testament, call them for what they are, tear them down, and move forward.
Yep. I like it. All right. Anything else before we close this out? All hearts and minds clear.
Austin's the really smart one. So I'm gonna look to
Dr. Tucker, anything else?
At this time, I have nothing to add to the conversation.
All right. Well,
for once.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to the Altars and Ashes podcast. Remember, the false altars of this age will fall. Do not bow to them. Christ's kingdom will stand. Do not despair at the ashes. Instead, worship the King, build his kingdom, and keep the fire burning.